Hello, everyone. Welcome to Myth and Magic. I am recording this a little early because my in-laws surprised my husband and I with a little trip to go see some ice castles, and we're really excited. And I was at work today, but I was only needed for the first hour, which I didn't realize. And so I'm going to get this done quickly so that I am just ready to go for next time. Love little happy circumstances. Today, we are talking about Artemis, one of my favorite goddesses. Despite, as a child, I resonated with her because I was a little bit of a vindictive, spiteful, vengeful sort of individual. And so aside from loving nature and the hunt and everything that Artemis represented, I resonated with her personality. So we're going to talk about her. I'm really excited about it. We are probably going to do one or two more Greek gods and then kind of move on to another pantheon or switch into more folklore sort of stuff. If there is something that you would like to discuss, either Greek or something else, let me know in the comments. I am all up for ideas on what you guys want to talk about, and yeah, I'm excited to keep going. But the pantheons are very large, and so my idea is to do a handful and then move on to something a little different and eventually come back and revisit. So if there is a Greek god that you're like, I need a video on this, just let me know and we'll get to it. So, Artemis, she is the daughter of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Leto, a titaness. She was born on the island of Delos, a sacred place where her mother Leto found refuge to kind of hide from the wrath of Hera, or Zeus's wife. And she is actually going to be the next one we're talking about, is Hera, because she's a fascinating individual, especially when you pop into modern culture and how she's used in different media. Artemis's birth was unique. In some myths, she is said to have helped her mother actually give birth to her twin Apollo. She was there delivering him as soon as she was born. This moment symbolized Artemis's strong connection to one of her domains, which was childbirth, and her later role as a protector. Artemis was commonly depicted as a young, athletic, and graceful woman embodying the ideals of purity, strength, and independence. Artists often portrayed her in a variety of ways, with distinct elements that emphasized her role as the goddess of the hunt and protector of the wild. And we're going to actually delve into a little more on what she looked like, because there's a little more information on that than there is some other goddess, just because of how often she was worshipped. She was very prevalent in Greek life. So firstly, she had a very youthful appearance, either being a very young adult or a teenager. She's also depicted as very beautiful, and her appearance conveyed vigor, vitality, and a connection to the untamed world. So later, when we talk about her hair, they're like, it was kind of wild and unkempt, but pulled back so that she could do what she does, which is hunt. She's also described as having an athletic build, but also graceful in her physique, strong yet elegant, symbolizing her prowess as a hunter, but also her youth. So the way I imagine it is more of, you have your gladiator build, which is the big, strong, burly, a little bit, I didn't go quite that heavy on Athena when I did her art, but with Artemis, I think more of like a runner or a swimmer, obviously more of a runner because of her hunting nature. She's usually shown wearing a short tunic or a toga made of a light, flowing material that allowed her freedom of movement and necessary for her hunting activities. It was also very often belted at the waist and was sometimes adorned with symbols of nature like leaves or animals. Her footwear, usually sandals, suitable for traveling through forest or rugged terrain, and where she would engage in hunting and protect wildlife. Her hunting gear was often a key attribute, including her bow and quiver of arrows, which were often well crafted, sometimes with a unique design, and her bow was almost always shown in her hands or slung over her shoulder. We talked a little bit about her hair, flowing, unkempt, simple yet functional, to reflect her untamed nature and activity. In some depictions, she wears a crown of like a headband made of natural materials like laurels, leaves, or flowers, symbolizing her connection to nature. She's also very often depicted with having animals, wild animals around her, to reflecting her domain over nature. She was frequently shown accompanied by deer, hunting dogs, or other forest creatures, emphasizing her role as protector of animals. There was even sometimes a large stag, or other large creatures, symbolizing her power and connection to the wild. There's even mention of bears and other things like that. Artemis is also connected to the moon. She is sometimes shown with a crescent moon above her head or around her, linking her to lunar symbolism. Apollo, her twin brother, is traditionally connected to the sun. Artemis's link to the moon reflects her role as the goddess of the night and wilderness after dark. It's interesting because they also go into her facial expressions. So they say that she was often wearing a serene but also fierce expression, reflecting her dual nature as both a protector and a punisher. She could appear calm and focused while hunting or interacting with nature, but when angry, which she often sometimes was, she could be vengeful, and which is seen in many myths that we will later talk about. She's also a virgin goddess, so kind of like Athena, but she seems to be, this is a very hardcore focus for Artemis. She was sometimes shown with symbols that conveyed her commitment to chastity, and she's wearing simple adornment, modest posture, which highlighted her purity. However, this aspect was not always overtly emphasized in her physical representation, but was rather conveyed through her characteristics and actions. In ancient sculpture and pottery, Artemis was sometimes shown in hunting scenes, often in motion or like mid-action, drawing an arrow. I actually took classes, I know how to draw an arrow, or aiming at game. In these depictions, her body language and positioning would communicate both grace and strength. There's also some really cool statues and artworks of Artemis. So there's the Artemis of Ephesus. This is a temple that was dedicated to her, and it's one of the most famous ones. It's shown what she's so. Okay, you have to look this picture up. It's very interesting because when I first looked at it, I wasn't like, oh, she has a lot of breasts. But those are breasts. She has several. And this is a symbol of her role as a nurturer and protector of life, especially fertility and childbirth. So just look up the Artemis of Ephesus, Ephesus, and it will, it's not graphic or anything. Like I said, I didn't realize what all of that was until I did my research. Now, in Roman mythology, Artemis is Diana. So Diana is based on Artemis, and there is art of the goddess Diana. I have a really hard time saying this word, the Diana of Versailles. I know how to say the word. My mouth just doesn't want to form it. Anyway, a version of Artemis standing in a relaxed hunting pose holding a bow is what this image is. And in classical pottery and sculptures from Greek vases show Artemis in action scenes, like we mentioned, typically drawing her bow, hunting, accompanied by deer or a dog, and her features would be idealized and youthful, and the art typically emphasized her athleticism and connection to nature. Artemis was considered very fierce, independent, and often merciless. And we have most of her stories convey this. We will talk about many of them. There's just too many. Artemis strangely has a lot of stories, unlike some of the other gods. So we're not going to be able to hit them all. I still want to keep this pretty, a reasonable time. But you can look up There are very many. She is the protector of young and vulnerable individuals, particularly animals and children. And often she is a virgin goddess, which reflected her autonomy and purity. And this aspect of her personality is central to her mythology and role. It's often brought up in her stories. And as a virgin goddess, Artemis had no interest in romantic or physically intimate relationships. And she was known to punish those who tried to pursue her, whether through vengeance or death. She did not like you flirting with her, so don't do it. Artemis's powers are very much connected to her role as a goddess. So we have her hunting. Artemis is perhaps most famously known for her exceptional skills as a hunter. She's very accurate with her bow and was unparalleled. She had a deep affinity for wildlife and nature, particularly deer, boars, and bears, and she was often accompanied by a pack of hunting dogs or other creatures. She also had control over wildlife. Her dominion over animals and the wilderness allowed her to communicate with animals, and she could ensure that nature remained in balance. So a little bit of a kind of coexistence thing with Demeter, but also having different roles in nature. And as we mentioned before, she's very protective of women and children, young girls especially, and most emphatically in women in labor, helping them in times of childbirth. And in some myths, she was said to be able to ease the pains of labor and to assist in childbirth itself, particularly women who were in need of aid. So if you're having birth is not easy now, but we have the medical ability to make it safer. And I think that's probably a lot of what women giving childbirth was hoping for is the safety that we now have, hoping that a goddess, Artemis, would be able to assist in that and help both baby and mother to survive. She did not touch romance, was not her thing, and demanded this same purity from her followers. Those who broke their vows of chastity or who tried to seduce her, as we mentioned before with those who tried to flirt, were met with severe punishment. She was also able to heal. Apollo, her twin brother, was known for his abilities in medicine. Artemis also had powers with healing, particularly for women and children. This is interesting. She also had the power to send disease or plagues, particularly among women or children who violated her sacred rules. So as much as she was there to protect them, she was also there to make sure that they were in line. And like many other gods, Artemis had the ability to shapeshift, not only herself, but also others, which we will touch on. But most commonly, she would transform herself into a deer, a bear, or even a tree in some myths, often to escape danger or punish transgressors. So her symbolism, we mentioned before, her bow and arrow. She also has a hunting knife, and all of these things would represent her role as a hunting goddess. Deer, protector of wildlife. Moon, so she sometimes is associated with the moon because of the night aspect of her role and her contrast to her twin brother Apollo. She's also depicted often with the stag, and more specifically a crescent moon. And then the bow and arrow again is also there to help communicate her decisive power and her swift strike in both hunting and her purity domain. Getting into a little more of the details, Artemis was the protector of young women, particularly those who had not reached marriageable age yet. She was fiercely protected of their chastity and innocence. Now, her worship was very common. We had her most famous temple was the one in Ephesus, which we mentioned before when we were talked about the statue with her many breasts. And it's considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The temple was renowned for its grandeur and housed that large statue of the goddess. There's also Delos. Artemis was venerated there. It's an island, and she was believed to have been born on this island, and pilgrims would come to seek blessings and protection from her. In Athens, Artemis has a cult at Brauron, where young girls would participate in rituals to honor her and were known as bearers, engaging in a rite of passage as they came of age. So let's talk a little bit about pop culture. She is not super prevalent in modern media, but she has been featured in a range of different things over the years. People probably know most is the Percy Jackson books. She is in those, and according to what I have here, she is portrayed as the leader of the Hunters of Artemis, a group of young girls who swear an oath of chastity and hunt monsters. She is depicted as strong, stoic, and fiercely independent, reflecting her mythological persona. In The Titan's Curse, which is the third book in the series, she plays a crucial role in helping Percy and his friends during their quest. She's also featured in the Wonder Woman DC comics, where she is sometimes portrayed as the leader of the Amazonian people. She has appeared both as an ally and an antagonist to Wonder Woman. In some storylines, Artemis is an Amazonian warrior, sometimes replacing Wonder Woman as the leader of the Amazons. She has served as a rival and a complex figure, often embodying the same ideals of strength and independence that Wonder Woman represents, but with a more aggressive and warrior-focused approach. In the New 52 or 2011 comics, the reboot, Artemis was reintroduced as a character who often found herself in conflict with Wonder Woman, portraying a fierce warrior, skilled in combat and archery, and even a potential rival for the mantle of Wonder Woman. So the internet also suggests the Hunger Games, but saying that Katniss Everdeen, because of her proficiency with a bow and her hunting in the wilderness and her kind of independent nature, who is also very protective of her sister, her skills and all those things kind of have her embodied as a persona of Artemis, because she portrays a lot of those qualities that she has. So not Artemis herself, but kind of a reference, or using Artemis as a reference for a character. In video games, we have Smite. This is a multiplayer online battle arena game. I have family who plays this. And Artemis is one of the playable characters. She is agile and a deadly hunter with various skills, reflecting her mythological connection to archery and animals. She is one of the many gods players can control, and her abilities focus on her bow and hunting creatures in the game. She's also in God of War. She doesn't always appear in every installment of the God of War franchise, but her presence is felt in the broader narrative surrounding Greek mythology. In some games, players may encounter characters or enemies that reflect her domain, especially when dealing with hunting-related quests or nature. In Hades, the 2020 game, Artemis appears, providing boons to the protagonists, which enhances the abilities with a bow. Her boons often focus on critical hits, increasing the player's damage output in various ways. And this iteration stays true to her mythological ties as a powerful figure associated with archery and hunting. In film and television, not a lot there. She was not shown in any of the Percy Jackson stuff that is currently out. She may appear if they continue to do the Disney Plus Percy Jackson. We'll see. But in Clash of the Titans, in both the original and in the 2010 version, Artemis's mythology is used as part of the background, so she's not actually in it, but her presence is felt in the portrayal of other gods and goddesses associated with the Greek pantheon, and her kind of like the background presence there. And then Xena, warrior princess, which will probably be often mentioned when we touch on Greek warrior gods, just because Xena is of Greek mythology and a warrior herself. This is a Warrior Princess TV franchise, and as a warrior and protector, she mirrors Artemis's characteristics, particularly the goddess's strength, independence, and combat powers. Artemis in these contexts is portrayed as a powerful and sometimes vengeful deity, which, yeah, there's reason for that. Which brings us to story time. All right, so I'm actually going to end the first video here, and we're going to do our next video with Artemis's stories because there are several, and yeah, I think it'll just be easier to have them in 2 parts. So I will see you guys next time and look forward to that. All right, bye.